Okay. So this Dharma talk is entitled Make Friends with Your Illness. And I'd like to share the introduction to Zen Master Dogen's Old Mirror, Kokyo chapter of the Shobogenzo, fascicle of the Shobogenzo. And I'd like to share a story from my teacher's life that is in connection with that story about the old mirror, and my own experience practicing with my teacher and how she worked with this old mirror, and draw some conclusions based on that. So that's the intent of this talk. So thank you first so much for your practice this morning. It's wonderful to hear Sarah on the voice did a great job, and it's just good to have us all together, especially this time of year where we shift the clocks ahead and people are thrown off a bit. The first paragraph of the Shobogenzo, Old Mirror, Kokyo, reads, "What the Buddhas and the ancestors receive and keep and uniquely transmit is the old mirror. They are the same view, the same face. They are the same image, the same casting. They study together and verify together. When a Buddha comes, a Buddha appears. When an ancestor comes, an ancestor appears." That's the intro. That's the intro to the Old Mirror fascicle. Zazen is like a mirror. It simply reflects our life and our thoughts without any judgment whatsoever. Generally, we're running away from the unpleasant and cling to the pleasant. In Zazen, though, equanimity emerges all by itself. Let me say that again. In Zazen, equanimity, the sense of not being pulled by the pleasant, not being repelled by the unpleasant, emerges all by itself through Zazen. And scary emotions like anxiety, depression, illness, death, and misfortune, all of these are reflected in the mirror of Zazen. The world judges us. The world judges us constantly. And we internalize the judgments of our parents as we mature into adults. We're inundated by judgments of society throughout our life. And that includes those internalized judgments. Unless we can see that even these judgments are themselves reflections, having no substantial existence. And when we can see that our judgments, the judgments that come from us from externally, the judgments that come from us internally, have no essence, no reality, that's transformation. That's the end of suffering. So I want to share a little bit about one aspect of my teacher's life. She suffered from asthma. She suffered from asthma the whole time I knew her, for the 15 years that I lived with her, but starting as a child. Maybe some of you can relate if you have childhood asthma, and it just continued into her adulthood. It never resolved itself. And when she was living in Japan, she lived in Tokyo, in a big, smoggy city. And of course, that did not help matters. She found different ways of dealing with asthma. She had good luck with a acupuncture doctor that helped a lot, but the asthma never subsided completely. And her asthma was serious enough that she always had to have an inhaler with her. But here's the thing, when she ordained as a priest, she moved to a mountain temple. Noda Daito Roshi's temple, her teacher's temple, was in the mountains, and it was a bird sanctuary. The air was clean, and so she had no problems with her asthma there for the 15 months that she lived on the mountain. And after experiencing this asthma-free lifestyle for several months, she thought, I am totally content to live up here on this mountain until the day I die. So she had no intention on going anywhere. But one thing was missing from her practice, and that was Sangha. That was community. Her teacher was the only other priest at the temple. And that's not a balanced way of practicing. And as she continued to practice, her grandfather teacher, Daishun Shimbi Roshi, he suggested that she begin training in a large temple with other women who were in a similar situation as her, just beginning their priest training. And it's expected in Soto Zen that we train at other temples with other teachers. That's a given. Especially if you're a priest in training, you want to have the perspectives of multiple teachers. And the purpose behind that is so that you don't get too attached to place or to teacher, because that naturally comes up. And Soto Zen is not a guru tradition. We don't pledge allegiance to a particular teacher. I'm not criticizing that particular way of practice, but because it is common in meditation cultures and in Asian religions to have that kind of relationship. But in Soto Zen, it's not that kind of relationship with the teacher. And so we have to be always on guard for getting too attached to one teacher in particular. And so Zen priests on purpose send their students out to other teachers to train with so they don't get too attached. And the other thing is that when you train at a small temple like she was, I mean, it was land-wise, it was a large temple, but it was small in the sense of it was only her and her teacher that were actually priests practicing together. And it's so beneficial to practice with multiple people for some period of time. It doesn't have to be forever, but generally we have these practices called Ango, which are 3 months long, and you go into a temple container with other priests, usually at least 15 other priests in training. And you're waking up together at the same time, you are eating at the same time, you're working together at the same time, you're sitting at the same. It's like a sesshin, except over a 3-month period. But there's not as much sitting as you would do in a sesshin. There might be a sesshin within that ongo period, though. There might be a sesshin every month in that 3-month period. And so for training, you're expected to do that anywhere, well, it depends on the person, of course, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to 5 years, some people longer. It just depends on the person and the needs and etc. And that container of practicing with other like-minded individuals, other priests, other lay people, because lay people also do this as well. It's not limited to priests practicing together in an ongo like that. And especially that's the case in the United States, where people who are not priests will train together alongside priests. I did that, and when I saw that, I witnessed that, I participated in that in Tassajara, which is in California, and there's majority actually in the United States are not priests, but they're doing these 3-month angos together, especially, and it's a real it's a real gift to be able to do that for a 3-month stretch. And it's very difficult to get our life circumstances together enough to be able to do that, especially as a lay person, because you got a job, you got a family, you've got bills to pay, etc. So to get your life organized in such a way that you could actually practice in that way is itself a good practice. It's a good challenge. And I know some people that they're really serious, they want to do this. And I remember one woman, she must have been in her 50s at the time, and she said she had prepared 2 years. It took her 2 years to get to a place where, as a layperson, she could do a 3-month practice period at Tassajara. So people do it. It's just you have to have the drive. But as a priest, in some ways, it's easier because you've dedicated your life to it, and you've dedicated yourself to not having a particular home abode, not having a space that you call mine. And that was certainly the case for my teacher at that time. But keep in mind, she'd been living on her own, in her own abode for over 10 years prior to that in Tokyo. So she had that experience as well, of course. But here she was training as a priest, and she needed to let go of the comforts of being one-on-one with a teacher and having pretty much not a supportive sangha, but to enter that container of training, of practice with other people that are at the same level as her as far as beginning training. And so you need, part of our practice is such an important piece, is that every member of the sangha, whether they're lay or priest, becomes your teacher. Why? Because we all have our ego issues. We all have our edges that come up. And the gift of practicing in that container, in that physical container with others, is that you see your stuff. You get to see your stuff come up. You get to see other people's stuff come up, usually before you see your own stuff come up. Right? So, it's so obvious when it's somebody else that loses it in practice. They get upset, angry, they get anxious, all that stuff. You see that in somebody else real quickly. And it's much more difficult to notice it in yourself. It's very easy to blame somebody else, like, oh, you're not practicing right, etc. It's much more difficult to turn the light and, again, get that great big mirror and look at yourself, right? That's what our practice is. Take the judgment, right? We're dissolving. You don't just jump into non-judgmental awareness, right? This is a process. This is a process that happens through training. And I mean, you can drop judgment just like that, no doubt. But we have to continue it over time, right? It's one thing to drop judgment in the moment, and any of us can do that immediately. It's another thing to continue that over multiple moments through time. And that's where the practice comes in. It's not just a one-time thing, it's a continuity, and keep doing it. It requires some degree of effort to maintain. And we can lose it. All of us are susceptible, whether we've been practicing for 3 months or for 30 years, right? So in any case, my teacher, Diane Roshi, she had proven to herself as well as to her teacher that she could live in a relatively austere environment in a mountain, in a small circular hut, just 6 feet in diameter. She was able to maintain a difficult schedule that included hauling large stones to build the temple that he was in the process of building. She exhibited great strength and reliability as an individual, but she had not yet been tested in that communal environment. She was, in a sense, the embodiment of American self-reliance. And she excelled in that way. And yet she had not been tested in working in a communal environment. So when her grandfather teacher, Daishun Shimbi Daisho, or Daishun Shimbi Roshi, suggested that she go to train in Nagoya with a community of female priests, and Nagoya, keep in mind, is a big city like Tokyo, she immediately gave a nonverbal protest. Here she was thinking, okay, I'm going to stay here on a mountain. My asthma has disappeared. I'm free from asthma. And I like this lifestyle. I'm strong. I can do it. So she non-verbally protested. And immediately her teacher, Daito Roshi, said, you're going. You're going. You're going to go train you're going to go to Nagoya. There's no question about it. You don't have a choice in the matter. And in a sense, this is one of the things that distinguishes priest from lay to a certain degree, is that if you commit to being a priest, then there's some understanding that you simply follow what the teacher says. Not in a guru type relationship, but that's the practice. All right, you're actually looking for that. You're looking for your edges to come up. Whereas if you're practicing as a layperson, you have to juggle multiple things and you have to be able to make your own choices. So in some ways, a priest lifestyle, you have to be ready, at least for a certain period of time with regards to your training, to completely drop your own choices. Right? Your preferences, that is, not your choices, but your preferences. You choose to let go of preferences, at least for a time period while you're training with your teachers, so that because you want to transform, that's what you're asking for, that's what you're choosing. And so her teacher said, once Daishun Shimbi said, you should train with women priests in Nagoya, Daito Roshi said, you're going. All right? So she didn't have it. It wasn't like he was asking her, do you want to go? It was, you're going. And so she then verbally protested. She said, but my asthma is going to flare up if I go to Nagoya. I know how it is in the big city. And Daito Roshi's response was, make friends with your asthma. In other words, don't run away from this illness that you have. Learn how to live with it. Make friends with your asthma. And I heard that teaching from her when I was practicing with her. And it was just, for me, it hit me like an arrow in my heart, just boom. Make friends. You can replace that word asthma with whatever illness, whatever thing that is bothering you. Right. So Diane Roshi was given a great koan in that moment. She didn't know how to make friends with her asthma. She knew how to run away from it. She knew how to escape it. She knew how to treat it to a certain degree, but she hadn't exactly made friends with it. And when I was practicing with her at Mount Equity Zendo, I witnessed so many days. We'd wake up early in the morning for meditation, and we sit from like 6 to 6:30 or that schedule. And she would come into the meditation hall, and I would be hearing on certain days, and it seemed to be certain seasons were worse than others. She would come into the meditation hall, and I could hear her wheezing. She could barely get air in, right? Because asthma closes up the lungs so that it makes it much more difficult to inhale. So she'd be, and I, of course, sitting in Zazen, I looked at her, and I asked her, "Are you okay? Can I get you something? Do you need anything? What can I do?" And she would say, it's okay, don't worry, I sit Zazen, everything will be fine. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, wow, she sounds terrible. She sounds like she's dying. And I could feel that. I would just sit with that. But then she was really sitting with it. She would come sit down in Zazen. And within 5 minutes, her breath would change. And the asthma would disappear. And of course, there was a feeling on my side of relief, because when we're around people that are sick, often the case when we're around somebody who's sick, we want them to be better so that we feel better. It's not about them, right? We want them to, we might think it's about them. We want to make it about them, but actually it's about us. It's about us. We don't like to be around people when they're not feeling well. And again, this is all opportunities to look at ourselves in that great big mirror. But just to say that she had made friends with her asthma. That was, 20, 30 years after Daito Roshi said that. Make friends with your asthma. She had done it. She came, she sat Zazen. It's okay. I'm not going to. Now, she also used an inhaler. And as her asthma grew worse, she would use her inhaler more frequently. But for many, many, many mornings in meditation, she went without an inhaler. And her Zazen enabled her to relax the breath and get back to homeostasis. And I think that's what's happening when we're doing Zazen and we're really letting go of the judgments. On a profound level, we're coming back into homeostasis. So all of us have our edges. That we all have places that bring us to the immediacy of life and death. And for Diane Roshi, her own illness was tied to breathing. That is just such a important process. If there's not breath, there's not life. So I just love the image of the bright mirror. There, this great mirror, and further on in this fascicle of the Shobo Genzo, Dogen brings in a story. The first story is about a monk named Gayashata. And it says that when Gayashata was born, a clear, bright, round mirror was born together with him. Just think about that imagery, right? It doesn't make logical sense that a mirror was born together with him, right? That doesn't make sense. But there's obviously something much deeper trying to be transmitted by Dogen to us here about the mirror. And interestingly to me, the Chinese characters for round mirror are Enkan. The N in Enkan is the same N as in Dai En, my teacher's name. So Dai meaning great, En meaning round or great circle. So it's that same N. And again, it's pointing her, but it's really pointing all of us to take seriously the power of the great mirror and to sit with that great mirror when we're practicing. That we're not bound by other people's judgments when we're sitting. We're not bound by our own internal judgments either. And this here is where our transformation really takes off. So, let's take a moment just to find the mirror. Pull the mirror up. Just like Gayashata. He was born and a mirror was simultaneously born with him. And the story goes on that the mirror followed him around until so wherever he went, there would be a round mirror following him. Sounds kind of, what's the story of the Greek mythology, the man who looked in the mirror all the time?
Narcissus.
Right, narcissist. Sound like a narcissist there. I don't think it's meant in that same train of thought as a narcissist. I think it's meant in the sense of that he had some kind of special awareness that he was able to simply reflect what was going on without attaching some judgment to it. And so he was naturally born free, like all of us. And at the same time, as the story concludes, there's a part of it where Gayashata, the mirror, when he, on the day that he's ordained as a priest, the mirror disappears. So the mirror is functioning in several very interesting ways for us and in our practice. I think what the story is, we need that mirror. We need that mirror when the judgments are there, whether they're internal or external. When the judgments are there, we need that mirror. But as we mature spiritually, we're going to still need that mirror. But as we mature spiritually, the mirror also dissolves. And so there's not this subject-object dualism present with the mirror. And we can simply sit. That's shikantaza, just sitting. We're not thinking about a mirror. We're not reflecting. We're just sitting. So that's a place for all of us to mature. Don't go right into dissolve the mirror. That's not the point either. But there's power in this metaphor of the mirror. And when we're in discursive thinking, we're not seeing the mirror. We're not seeing the mirror in front of us. But at the same time, Zen doesn't allow us to take root in one spot. So we have to be also careful about simply being in non-judgmental awareness. That's not going to be ultimately helpful either. That's not it. That's not nirvana. We have to also let go of that, and hence the dissolving of the mirror for Gayashata. So not to attach to the mirror, the beauty of that mirror, the narcissism in a sense of, oh, look, I have peace of mind. Not to attach to that peace of mind either. Because sometimes we're just going to have to let it go and re-enter the world of duality and the world of judgment, the world of internal judgments, the world of external judgments. That's going to be there for us. Zazen gives us a time to step away from it, and then we return back into it. But when we return back into it, we know that we're not caught by it. And that's the key, right? We're not going to get rid of those judgments. Just like my teacher's not going to get rid of her asthma, but we can function with it from a different place. All right. So that's what I want to share today. Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to your comments and thoughts on this. Thank you.